Welcome to the New Bedford Light Chat. This is a series of election Zoom interviews that we've done with the candidates. The first was on the at-large candidates last month, and tonight we'll have the ward candidates for the three contested races, not the uncontested races in wards 3, 4, and 6. And on Wednesday, we'll have the school committee races. So tonight, our guests are in Ward 1, challenger Matt Marco and incumbent Leo Chiquette. In Ward 2, challenger Scott Pemberton and incumbent Maria Giesta. And in Ward 5, challenger Renee Fernandez and incumbent Joe Lopes. Welcome all.
Hello.
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 Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us here.
Okay. Some of these questions tonight will, because it's a ward race, will apply to just your ward or just your own backgrounds, and some of them will apply to issues facing the city as a whole. So why don't we start with the issues facing the city as a whole, and we'll talk about what I think is the biggest issue this year, housing. Uh, to me, the housing debate in New Bedford has basically come down to rent stabilization, which is sort of an updated version of rent control, not quite as rigid as some of the old rent control, but still having some limitations on landlords, and just build more housing. The city has built that, as I understand it, 400 plus units in the last year, but it needs 4,000 units for all the people that need affordable housing in New Bedford. So why don't we start with some of the incumbents and ask, where do you come down on rent stabilization versus building more housing? Leo Chiquette?
Thanks, Jack. I think a lot of folks know I'm not a big fan of rent stabilization, although there are some limited uses for it, right? I think that our elderly population, folks who fall in under certain extreme circumstances, like they have fully fixed incomes, only Social Security, and even maybe have paid off their whole mortgage, right? And all they can do is deal with property taxes increases or if they do rent, the landlords are not unfortunately going to absorb the difference between rising property value costs against a fixed a fixed rent. Okay, so I am worried about the elderly population. I think there should be some relief for folks who are living, maybe above the age of 65, who have no other income other than SSI or Social Security.
Are you talking about a tax break?
I'm talking about some kind of potential tax break there. But one thing about rent stabilization, you can't control the housing market.
Okay, so I'm going to prompt you a little bit quickly just to move it on.
Yeah.
If you're not in favor of rent stabilization, how do we fill that gap between 400 units built a year and 4,000 needed immediately?
Well, we do need, affordable housing. So the question becomes, where do we build them, right? My thoughts are, once again, abandoned schools, abandoned churches from the Fall River Diocese. And this has already been, explored by Mr. Carl Cruz and John Cruz from Cruz Construction. I think that one of the things holding that up, and I talked about this earlier today with New Bedford Light, is the parking issue. So we need to have some kind of reduction in the 2.0 cars per person ratio, which is currently, in most neighborhoods. If we're going to have an affordable housing, we're going to try to squeeze people into these churches that we're going to reconstruct, or these schools that we're going to reconstruct. It's not so much the people that are the problem, it's the cars. So I think we need to work with developing these districts where, and you could argue it's spot zoning, but we have to find a way to shoehorn these structures in so that you can put 50 people in one of these places, because 50 people times 2 cars, right, is 100 cars plus visitors. And we had a similar issue in Ward 1 at the New York China Buffet. I know you've been following that.
I just want to, I don't mean, Leo, I don't mean to be rude, but I do need to try to get people in and out. And I should have said this in the beginning in 2 or 3 minutes because
Okay, go ahead.
otherwise
Sorry.
we're not going to get through. Let me go to your opponent, Matt Marco. You're up in the far north end. We do have some what I would call garden apartment units in the far north end. The housing crisis exists there as well as every place else. What's your solution to the housing crisis?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is a crisis. I think it's one of the issues the city's facing that I care about the most. I don't think Leo is far off with his parking spots idea. I think that would be more of a ward by ward fix. I don't think that, works all over the city. I think there are certain parts near downtown that could work at. But I think one of the biggest things when it comes to housing, I think about when it comes to affordable housing is the city pushing further with developers and with the state to use the LIHTC credits that are available to build more affordable housing. I think that, when I've talked with developers around town, they've told me that is something that other cities push harder towards using. And they haven't seen the same effort from City Hall in New Bedford.
Okay. Joe Lopes, you represent Ward 5, which is close to the downtown. Not actually the downtown, that's Ward 4. But downtown, it seems like hard to get one parking unit for each new unit, especially with the train coming in. How do you see housing going and meeting these needs in the city?
I will tell you, Jack, and me and you have talked about this before. One of the things that we need to look at is all of the city-owned real estate that we have, the vacant lots across the city. It doesn't matter if it's in the north end, the south end, or the west end, and we need to bring those lots back to the tax rules. The city has to stop owning those lots, promote them through an RFP, get developers to look at it, and stop building on some of these older lots that have been now defunct for decades. You go through certain neighborhoods and you have a jack-o'-lantern of house, lot, house, and an empty lot. All of those empty lots at one time had 2, 3, or 4 families in them. And that alleviated some of the housing crunch, not all of it. As you know, we talked about this before, the cost for housing is extremely high because there's a demand and there's not a supply to correlate to the demand. If we started incentivizing developers to start taking over some of those vacant lots, not just the schools or the archdiocese properties, but the actual vacant lots across the city, and you start developing those, you're bringing them back on the tax roll, you're providing income to the city in regards to real estate, residential real estate tax, and then you're also providing a lifeblood to those neighborhoods that haven't had a shot in the arm in a long time, and you're bringing back abandoned properties and you're providing housing at the same time. It's a win-win situation for the city. Taxes, redevelopment, and housing.
But isn't part of the problem with these vacant lots is that Massachusetts property ownership laws are so stringent that you have to go to find so many heirs for so many different generations and whatever heir to that property, and in order to foreclose on it, that it's very hard to get it going quickly to address 4,000 units.
Jack, but I'm looking at starting with the properties that we already own that we've taken through tax title that we haven't disseminated through the Abutters Lots program or any other program, lots that we already own. And the planning office has provided us a detailed listing of those lots. Now it's engaging the developers and those lots to put them back to use.
Renee, what about the parking? We have a lot of building going on in the downtown right now. I don't think those apartments all have one car space per unit. What do you think about how do you balance that versus we just need more housing?
We absolutely do need more housing, Jack. And all I can say to you is that when we're talking about reducing parking, we're talking about we're trying to make New Bedford a walking city. And I can clearly say to you that it is not a walking city. So for instance, all of those houses that are being built in the downtown area right now, all of those folks still have to get in their cars every day to go to a grocery store, to go to a medical facility. I think that it's a very nice thought to think that we're going to create a city where everybody can walk and have access to what they need, but that's not what's happening right now. And so I think that we need to take a step back and look at what it is that we're really trying to, what we're trying to attain in this whole process. You know, parking is definitely an issue, but we're not giving our residents what they need in terms of where they live and how they're going to create what they have and do what they need to do with it.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, how do we do that? That's a very good question. So I think that, I mean, we really need to take another look at our zoning. And, you know, as Joe said earlier, we do have a lot of vacant lots here in the city, and we need to look at, you know, do we want to create like specific parking areas? Do we want to establish more resident parking in the city? These are the things we need to look at. Even more important than that, if we are looking at migrating to a walking city, what are we doing to attract those type of businesses that we need in these core areas where it can become a walking city, where people have the services that they need and they can walk to them. So I think when we talk about housing, quite frankly, for me, it's a multi-pronged issue. We can't talk about housing without talking about education, without talking about economic opportunities, without talking about, you know, folks making competitive wages in the city to be able to afford housing. There are so many different issues, and I don't think it's a simple fix. As you said earlier, we're 4,000 units behind. I've said this before. I find New Bedford to be a very reactive city. And I think that this housing issue, somebody should have recognized that this was a problem 8 years ago and been doing something to do something about it.
All right, let's go to Maria Giesta up in Ward 2. Maria, I can't help but bringing up that there was a housing development, not the biggest one, at Phillips Avenue School that you held up. You wanted it, I think your latest position is half housing, but the neighbors want a community center and they want parking. But, you know, Ward 2, like every place else in the city, needs more affordable housing. How do you balance those needs? You're on mute, Maria.
Sorry about that. First of all, Jack, I think people's memories have been put to the wayside regarding Phillips Avenue School. As you know, the neighborhood, I held a few neighborhood meetings regarding the project there, which my colleague was also there at city property meeting. And my job as a ward counselor is to listen to the people in my ward. And the people around Phillips Avenue School did not want more housing. Now, remember, this is 8 years ago. The need for housing was not what it is today. And we also have to remember there were two other projects that wanted to go into Phillips Avenue School that were also denied. So this was not the first time that a project that was brought up for Phillips Avenue School was brought up at that time. Former Ward 2 City Councilor and Mayor Fred Kalis was one of the outspoken opponents to that project. And like I should do, as any ward council should have to do, is listen to their residents and their constituency. I never said that the Crews was a bad company. I never maligned them in the news. I thought it was a very good project, but again, I had to listen to the people of my ward, and that's what I did. And we can see from, as the years have gone by, parking has become a huge issue in this city. And again, another issue that I've been working on since the day I was elected. And unfortunately, I did not get a lot of support from my colleagues or this administration regarding what are we going to do about the access excess of commercial vehicles that are parking in neighborhoods. And if you remember, Jack, people in the Phillips Avenue neighborhood, that's what they wanted there was parking. It's a big issue, and it was a big issue 8 years ago, and it's a big issue now. And
Okay. So why don't we go to housing in general? Because I think you're correct that parking is a big issue also in the city. And I didn't mean this to be just about Phillips Avenue.
I know, but
Yeah.
you brought it up, and I wanted to clarify because there's a lot of misinformation out there about what really happened, and people's memories get lost.
Yeah, but
Okay.
how about affordable housing in Ward 2 in general? What would you like to see done?
Well, I will say, as the chair of City Property Committee, we have done a very good job in bringing forward a lot of properties, city-owned properties for development. Yeah, we need affordable housing. It is outrageous, the rents and the cost of homes in the city. Listen, I'm a homeowner. When I think about how my mom and dad paid $14,000 for this house that I now live in, and it's been valued at $700,000. That's a huge amount of money that people have to pay for and ask people to pay for their mortgages in rent. There are, like my colleague from Ward 5 said, there are a lot of vacant lots. There are ADUs, the in-law apartments that we can cultivate and create. Again, and regarding the Catholic diocese, let me just say that a few weeks ago, I did meet with the Boston diocese regarding some of the properties, the churches that they have here that are closed. And they are looking at turning them into affordable housing. So that's the good news.
Okay, let's move on to Scott Pemberton, who hasn't had a chance yet. Scott, turn off your mute button. And you're a long-time city resident. What are your thoughts about getting more affordable housing into New Bedford?
Well, what we can't do, Jack, is we can't stand in the way of new housing projects. That's what we can't do. We also need more stock. And you said it, we built 400 and we need 4,000, and we can't stabilize rent without stabilized taxes.
So how do you intend to address that 4,000 shortage?
Well, just basically is, stabilized taxes is just, we just have to make cuts to the budget. We have to make significant cuts to the budget.
Well, we're going to talk about taxes in the budget as we go on, but I'd like to, right at this portion of the conversation, talk about housing and how we can help people who are young and can't afford to either rent or buy at this point.
Well, we just got to be champion of all housing. We just got to be able to help the young ones, the young buyers, be able to buy a housing. We got to work with planning.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything else about housing? I thought I saw Matt Marco's hand up. No? Yes? Okay. As we go on, I'll just...
Jack, one thing I just wanted to throw in there. We also want to make sure that, we don't change the character of the neighborhoods, right? We want to make sure that while we're trying to squeeze these places in, we're not building 50 units on the end of side streets with all single family homes. Like we got to kind of have it's got to kind of blend in to some extent. So that's another thing to take
how would you weigh that versus the need for more housing?
They're both equal. I mean, the people that live in my ward, right? We were able to get one project approved, the old medical park near Sassaquin. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? We used to be the old Hawthorne Medical. So we got the Kudo brothers to purchase that. They're gutting it out. They're going to put 60 units in there. We have no problem with the parking there. It doesn't change the character of the neighborhood. But the New York China Buffet proposal with 25 apartments on a 1 acre lot, where are you going to put 50 cars? Right? They're all going to back up onto Maryland, Jerry, Ohio. So now that's a problem. And that's how, so we
Are people pretty skeptical that mass transit, more buses, we have free buses now, we have commuter rail now, is going to solve the problem of transportation? That we won't need so many cars?
well, I mean, of course, we don't have a T system, right? But we do have we have the commuter rail from one stop down from Church Street to downtown. I mean, that's not going to be the same
We have
as
SERTA.
having a true
We have the
bus. We have the
SERTA.
bus service. The bus service is great.
So maybe we
you know,
don't. Maybe we
but
don't.
again, people are still going to have 2 cars per unit. There's going to be overflow for visitors at these places, right? So that's where the problem with the parking comes into play.
Okay. So let's move on to taxes and the costs of the budget. The mayor has said that the biggest drivers of the budget in New Bedford are the pension system for retired employees and the healthcare system for employees. He's tried 3 times to get the city council to buy into Section 21 to 23 of the state's health insurance plan that allows a neutral arbitrator instead of the unions to have the final say on the health care for city employees. He cites numbers that $40 million a year for the pensions, a bigger budget than police, fire, or DPI. And he cites numbers for $50 million a year for healthcare for employees and retired employees, a 10.4% increase just this year. And yet the city council has never considered his solutions. How would you rebut the mayor on this? Let's start with Joe Lopes. And I'm just a pet peeve of mine. No, everybody doesn't have to say Jack on every answer. I know what my name is.
So I can't start with hi, Jack. So it's a couple different things in regards to taxes, pension, and healthcare. I have said since 2017, when this item first came up, that we needed to change healthcare, but phase it in over X number of years. Protect the retirees, because that's one of the biggest issues, the retirees. To protect the retirees. Second, anyone that has more than 15 years of service, they continue to stay in the form that they're in. All the new hires would go into a different healthcare like the GIC. New hires versus existing and retirees. You're not going to get the same big bite at the apple that you would get by moving everybody at one time. But if you do it strategically over time, you're going to get to that end result, and you're going to do it in a less painless manner because we're protecting the retirees. We're guaranteeing those that we've already hired under a system, but all those new hires that we're bringing on board, they would be the ones that would deal with the GIC. Other communities across the country have done it. And how do we look at replicating something similar to that? You're not going to get the massive saving at one time, but you would get a substantial savings, and you'd gain that savings every year as we're moving on with new hires versus the legacy hires, as you know they've been called.
What about Section 21 to 23 to get control of those healthcare costs so that a neutral arbiter decides the impasses between the employee unions and the administration?
The minute you adopt that, you lose the ability to negotiate with the retirees and everyone else. You change the structure immediately.
My understanding is you can still negotiate. It's just that when you come to an impasse, then the neutral arbiter comes in.
Well, I remember in 2017 when we had these discussions, or is it 2018? I don't remember, so I apologize on the year, when we were told that this was an issue that you wouldn't be able to negotiate separately. The other thing in regards to healthcare costs, and I just brought this up again 2 nights at our last finance meeting, was other communities across the Commonwealth allow people to opt out of health insurance. If your spouse or your partner has health insurance from another job, you're allowed to opt out, and we give you basically a healthcare holiday. We haven't instituted that in the city. I tried doing that when the former CFO, Ari Sky, was here. I've tried doing it with the current CFO now as another means to reduce those costs. And our head of personnel basically said that it's something that he's currently looking at or exploring, is how do we do this? If it's going to cost us $14,000 and change for a family plan, and you can pay somebody to take their spouse's health insurance and give them $4,000 or $5,000, you're immediately saving $9,000 to $10,000 in that first year.
I did not know that. You can't opt out in New Bedford?
No, you're not allowed to. I have tried since 2018, 2019 to get the administration to allow individuals to opt out and use their spouse, and the administration has adamantly said no to it.
What would be their reasoning for that?
So in 2017 or 2018, we were told that the actuarials wouldn't provide a significant savings to make it worth the cost that HR would have to do on the back end. Miraculously, 7 years later, the new HR director said it's something that he's looking at and he's going to evaluate for what the cost benefit to the city would be.
Okay. Renee, you're a former treasurer of the city of New Bedford and the town of Middleborough. You're a numbers person. You know how things work. What is your approach to the rapidly escalating costs of healthcare and pensions?
Well, Jack, in terms of section 21 to 23, I think it's definitely worth having a dialogue about. I just can't understand why this is not advancing. I can tell you personally, as an employee of the town of Middleborough, I am now a member of the GIC, and my health insurance isn't that much different from when I was working for the city of New Bedford, quite frankly. There are a lot of different options that you can buy into. And I mean, what I'm getting, I feel that is more than adequate for in terms of health insurance. I just really think there needs to be a conversation because it is very concerning when you look at the increasing cost of health insurance that the city of New Bedford has been facing over the last many years, quite frankly. I mean, being self-insured is a huge issue in all of that. And my understanding of section 21 to 23 is that, yes, an arbitrator is involved, but I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into that before an arbitrator even steps in. So there are reviews of health insurance. There's a presentation. The city can say yay or nay. The PEC can say yay or nay at that point. And then at that point, if it's not agreed upon, then it goes to an arbitrator. But there's a lot of steps before it even gets to the arbitrator in terms of when you read that legislation. So. Okay. In my mind, I think it's a really good idea to just at least open the door and just to be able to look at something differently.
Yeah, my understanding is that the council has never even been willing to have a discussion on the issue. It makes it look to me like there may be a lot of influence by the city unions in that. Renee, this is not a big issue, but are you still working for Middleborough? Because when I look up on the list, it had an interim.
Yes, no, I am retired, Jack.
Okay.
My actual last official day is Thursday.
All right. Well,
yes.
Congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you. Thank you. And can I say one more thing to you about health insurance? I want to say, I believe that some years ago in New Bedford, I think that everyone was actually changed over to an HMO. New Bedford basically eliminated a couple of the plans, like you couldn't enter into a POS or a PPO. I think right now everyone in New Bedford is in an HMO, but I can tell you that with a GIC, there are a lot of options, whereas you have more choices in terms of, the breadth of the health insurance that you may want to buy into.
Oh, interesting. I've always been under the impression it was the opposite. Maria, you've been on the council for a while, and I know you are a pro-union person. What is your reason for not wanting to? Well, let me ask you a more open-ended question. What do you think should be done to get the cost of pensions and healthcare under control?
Well, hopefully I'm not on mute again. Just listen to what Renee just said, that being under the GIC plan really didn't demonstrate a huge savings, right? So my point of view is that the mayor has to do a better job in meeting with the PEC board. He has to sit down with them and really go over everything, and he hasn't done that. And
Maria, can you explain what the PEC board is? I know what it is, but our viewers might not know.
public employee,
Public Employees
Public
Committee.
Employee Commission, yep.
And what does it do? Explain.
explain what they do. Well, they,
Yeah, because you're saying the mayor is not having enough negotiations with them.
well, yeah, I mean, they are, I guess you can call the commission the board, which represents the unions throughout the city. And, you know, they just want the opportunity to sit down with the mayor and discuss different options of healthcare. And they're just not getting that. So, you know, I just think there's a better way, and I think we have to come together as a community, and the mayor has to do a better job in sitting down with everyone and making sure that we are doing the best for all the city employees when it comes to their health care. It's not cheap. Nothing is cheap nowadays. But I am not going to allow anyone to bully both the unions and the employees of the city, period.
All right. Scott Pemberton, what are your thoughts about how we could get better control of the escalating costs of pensions and also health care for both city employees and retired city employees?
Well, I mean, we can't do it. We can't do it overnight. You know, the people want assurance. You know, they took their jobs away. You know, the city pays the city's pay scale is not competitive. The benefits is not you know, you need a selling point, and we have to just hire and we have to retain employees.
Okay. Have you thought about whether the city should join, should adopt section 21 through 23 so a neutral arbiter can break the gridlock on health negotiations with the city unions?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Leo, I always think of you as kind of a numbers guy. You're a financial advisor, fiscally conservative. You can correct me if I'm wrong. What about these escalating? They say that the pension is growing so fast that you know, right now it's already bigger than the police and fire and DPI. Is it going to be bigger than the schools? The pension
So,
is escalating, and the healthcare costs are escalating by 10% last year.
so this is the world we live in, right? Every city, every town is facing this. My point on all this, look, these contracts were negotiated in good faith in the past. And if you think of the city as a company, and the mayor is the owner of the company, you know, you can't balance your budget. You cannot balance your budget by cutting workers' benefits. That is the reason in the 1880s and 90s why unions were invented in the first place. All right, I get it. We're under assault from all factors, internal and external, but cutting benefits is not the answer. Bringing in more revenue is the answer. Now, how do we do that? That's probably another topic that we'll get to later. But what I wanted to say is, you know, in the short term, there are some things that we can do to maybe save a little money, right? We can do comparative cost analysis with different insurers. We can do that program called PBRICS. Now we have, which is a way of trying to save money on drug costs in certain insurance programs. We had Mr. Govea come in, and actually Councilor Lopes was talking about that meeting when he was speaking earlier. You know, our city, you know, HR head is hung up on this consultant called Lockton and says, oh, Lockton says this, Lockton says that. Well, I don't know who Lockton is, and I really don't care what they say. We need to have an open market comparison of different plans to try to save some money. But, you know, that's only a drop in the bucket. And And again, the answer is absolutely not to cut workers' benefits in this city. People need to understand that. Look, I'm a private sector guy, right? And a lot of people are. But the public sector doesn't pay the same amount of income that the private sector does. I mean, it's not a huge difference, but it's 10 to 15% difference.
I just play devil's advocate a little bit, and I'll say that a number of the cities and towns that are more affluent around New Bedford have adopted Section 21 through 23. And we just had Renee a few minutes ago tell us that in Middleborough, she has more options, and they've adopted Section 21 through 23. I just
Yeah, but you're comparing apples to oranges. You're comparing Marion and Mattapoisett to the city of New Bedford, which is completely different.
Right, they have more money. They have more money and less expensive healthcare plans. And they have the Cadillac plan is supposedly in New Bedford, and these are more affluent towns. I mean,
and I would be willing to say the New Bedford workers per capita probably make less income overall than the Mattapoisett and Marion ones or the other surrounding towns. It's a benefits driven package. The mayor thinks it's tough to hire policemen. Start cutting their health insurance and see how much harder it'll be to hire policemen or firemen. And I'm very strong, like Councilor Giesta. I am very much against cutting the benefits that the unions are negotiated.
You're describing it as cutting the benefits, and I'm at least as far as what Renee was saying, I'm not, and as what I've read, I'm not sure that it's an automatic cut. It's a different kind of insurance. But let's go to Matt.
You're opening the door too. You're opening the door.
Yeah, Mr. Marco, you're a small businessman. I think the business you run, which I'd like to get into later, is called What is it? Tranquil Tides, a sauna and cold plunge business. But we'll talk about that in a bit if we have time. But what about these escalating healthcare costs? Ward 1 is one of the most affluent wards in the city. Property taxes are high up there. Do you have to just grin and bear it and have whatever the unions want?
I don't think that's the correct framing of it. I would say that we shouldn't go back on negotiated contracts with unions. I think we want New Bedford to remain very competitive when it comes to hiring the best young police officers, firefighters, city officials, etc. I think it sounds to me like there's wiggle room in the middle. I think the mayor's office can do a better job at looking at the options. And I think there can just be better negotiating from both parties to come to resolutions that, can provide a comprehensive benefits package to city employees, and maybe chip away at the cost. But that's just one part of a much larger budget. I also, to me, I haven't been involved in local politics all that long, but it seems like in previous years, decades even, that, the can has been kicked down the road a little bit on this. It seems like now it's all coming to a head. And I think that could have been avoided with better communication between City Hall, this board that decides all the rates, and hopefully going forward, that communication can lead to better outcomes, because it seems at the moment we're stuck in this tough next 10 years here where we really do have to grin and bear it. So on that front, I would say, yeah, we need to look at all options as far as cuts to the budget. I think we need to look at possible ways to incentivize revenue growth by bringing business, all of that.
Okay, I just want to correct one thing. Nobody is suggesting that the city renege on negotiated contract.
Yeah, of course.
The city would honor whatever contracts have already been negotiated. It sounds though, Matt, that you're hinting that the present council or recent councils could have a better relationship with the mayor, that their communication hasn't been
No, I was more talking about the commission, the board that you referred to earlier. But I think all parties could probably have a better relationship. I know that things have been heated lately. These are very tough issues. And when you have this benefits package costing more than the police department, things can get heated. But I think people need to come together and prevail with some better ideas, better negotiations. And I think down the road, I'm a big fan of milestones. And I think down the road, if next year, the year after that, we can't rein this in, then I think I'd be more open to some other sort of stipulations or considering those rules. But at this point, I'm not ready to do that.
All right. Are you a former teacher at Alma Del Mar?
No, I worked on the operations side of things. My wife is a teacher, so shout out to all the teachers out there listening. One of the most important jobs there is. But no, I've never claimed to be a teacher myself.
Okay.
I
So
definitely couldn't do it.
that actually leads me to my next topic, and that is the schools. The city council doesn't have a whole lot to do with the actual operation of the schools, but it does vote on the overall school budget. And New Bedford has had a hard time getting above net school spending because it doesn't have the tax base of some of the suburbs. The suburbs go over net school spending and have some bells and whistles in their systems that New Bedford sometimes doesn't have. Do you have any theories as to how New Bedford can get above net school spending? You know, the minimum amount that the state requires for the public school system, Matt?
Yeah, that's a big question and one that has been a struggle here in the city for years. Um, and yeah, there is no easy answer. I think that we need to really go all out on whatever we can do to maximally fund the schools. I think the schools are where, we fight poverty, where we make sure kids eat, where they're learning all the things they need to be successful members of the community in coming years. And there's not one single way to do it, but I think everybody needs to be on board with maximally funding the schools, working with the state, trying to get maximum benefits, federal benefits, state benefits, all of the above. Yeah.
Yeah, Leo, how do we get New Bedford, which struggles with its raising taxes, raising revenue, to exceed net school spending for its school system? As we know, the state seems to be cutting back every year. Although I think in the school they're cutting back on local aid in the schools, it's increased, but New Bedford still is having a hard time getting above net school spending. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, again, to kind of mirror what my opponent said, school is where children grow up. They go there, they're fed, they're taught. So, we want to have the best that we can possibly get for the kids. And that is education, safety, health, etc. Again, we're just city councilors, right? So, we need to, but what we can do is work with the school committee. We got really smart people on there. You got Colleen DeWicki, Melissa Costa, Bruce Oliveira, several others on there. You get the mayor as chairman ex officio. We got Tony Cabral, Mark Montigny, great state reps and our state delegation. That's really, they need to work with us at the state level to maximize the state aid. Obviously, Congressman Keating at the federal level, Senator Warren, Senator Markey. It's a collaborative effort. I mean, we're really kind of at the bottom of the food chain as far as what we can do directly. But you know me, Jack, I'll work with anybody. I mean,
You can earmark more money for them.
yeah. Well, I mean, if we got the money, let's earmark it,
Yeah, Renee, you're a numbers person. What are your thoughts as to how to get the support for the schools up to the level that we see in some of the suburbs?
Yeah, so I think that for all of the years that I worked in New Bedford, I think that the biggest problem was actually the formula, the Chapter 70 formula. And I think the important thing right now is that we as city councilors, we as New Bedford administration, we as school committee members need to really, really work with our state and federal delegation to let them know how important it is that they actually go back and take another look at that formula and recognize, why New Bedford isn't getting, everything that it needs. In terms of our actual budget and not meeting net school spending, first of all, education, Jack, it's the most important thing. It's pretty much the foundation of everything that's ever going to happen in New Bedford. If we can't provide a good education to our children, we should just hang it up right now because we're never going to get anywhere. So, the thing is that, we need to, first of all, we need to decide what is the mission of our school? In my mind, our mission is our job is to educate our children. And what that looks like is different to a lot of people in terms of what a child needs or what we need to do to bring a child forward to get them to the next level. So I think it's just really important that when we're looking at the schools, and I know the city council is responsible for approving their budget and all of that, it's very important to me to really peel that onion, okay, to see what are we really spending money on there? Are we spending money on children's education? Are we spending money on administration? Where is the money going? And that's the important part to me. Those are the things that I need to see. For me, first of all, it's mission, it's statutory obligation, and then and how are we getting to there?
Okay. Very good. Joe Lopes, you've been on the council for a while, off and on. What are your thoughts about getting the net school spending number surpassed, if you indeed agree that it should be?
So the one thing I think we can all agree on is education is paramount to the future of the city. It is one of those three pillars, public safety, education, and taxes that people talk about to their elected officials. Chapter 70 formula, it was looked at a couple of years ago. We saw an increase in aid, but that formula still is not perfect. And when the school committee does present its budget to the council, that is one of the items that's always talked about. But one of the things that we need to do is make the budgetary process more inclusive, where the council and the school committee are actually sitting at the same table prior to that budget being submitted. Because Jack, as you know, in years past, there's been the mayor's proposal for school funding and the school committee's funding request for funding. And that's where that issue comes up every once in a while, where the school committee is requesting one amount and the mayor is proposing another amount. So making it a more inclusive process where we're all at the table at the same time will help move that process forward.
What's the doggy's name?
So I have two. I got a silver lab named Doc, and I got a Greater Swiss Mountain Dog named Duke. Duke is the one you just heard. He likes to be heard.
That's okay. He doesn't want to be ignored. Keep going, Joe.
So that's where I was going to say, the Chapter 70 formula, more of an inclusive budgetary process between the city council, the administration, and the school committee. We all collectively want to make sure that the funding is there to run the school department. The school committee and the city council work hand in hand when it comes to building new schools and accelerated repairs. If we utilize that same process as it comes to the budgeting for the school department, I think you'd see a better relationship as it relates to getting a number above net school spending. Because whenever it comes to building a school or repairing a school, collectively, we're all on the same page because we know how important it is for the students and the teachers and the administrators to have a good quality place to work and provide that education for the students.
Scott Pemberton, do you have any thoughts about net school spending? It's the minimum that the state requires you to give. But New Bedford had a hard time exceeding that. Any thoughts about how we can get more money into the school system?
Well, with our growing budget, the school being the largest employer, I don't think we can exceed the net school spending. We, the city council, we vote on the budget, but we can't add. It's the school committee that needs to work on exceeding the net school spending. Basically, our state litigation need to work on new fund models for state aid.
Yeah, if only they would.
If only.
Last but not least, Councilor Giesta, what are your thoughts on getting that number up a little higher over net school spending, if indeed that's what you want to do?
Well, as my colleague stated, I think we need to do a better job in communication and working together. But we also have to remember cities like New Bedford, when it comes to their schools, have very different obligations than a lot of the towns that surround us and other wealthier communities. And I'm not bashing charter schools, but most towns don't have to deal with charter schools. The city of New Bedford has to share a lot of that funding that should come directly to us. We not only are public schools, and I'm not saying charter schools are not public schools. I'm just saying that
Because I'm going to be inundated if you say that.
there's more obligation in our city, and we don't have that funding to be equal among all of our schools, correct? So I think the state, I think the federal government has to do a better job in funding education, because it is the most important thing in anybody's life. I was very lucky that my parents could afford to send me to what is now UMass Dartmouth, which was SMU. You know, my parents didn't pay $25,000 a year, thank God. So education, you know, I have a nephew that's special needs, and you know, there's many projects and obligations that our schools have here that a lot of other schools don't. A lot of other cities and towns, they don't have the same education obligation that we have. So I think places like New Bedford, especially, we should be getting a lot more money than what we are. And if we did get that money, I think we would have a better way of educating and making sure that that money is going towards our students. I see a lot of the money in this last budget, it was going towards the administration. We need to make sure that that money goes towards our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our students, period. And that's what I support.
All right. Maybe I didn't ask the question as well as I could have, because I was thinking that somebody was going to say something about growing the tax base through more industrial and commercial development, which leads me to the last issue that I wanted to talk about, and that is the city has had trouble attracting big industry and commerce since the mills departed. We have had some success in redeveloping the waterfront, but we failed to be able to market part of the golf course for a new business park. We're going to try again. We're now bringing the parallel products possibly into New Bedford if they appeal, which, in my opinion, might adversely affect the currently successful business park. What do people think in terms of growing revenue in the city? Let me start with Leo.
It's bad. Listen, if you look at any gateway city in the Commonwealth, I think we have the least amount of big box retailers and large commercial companies than anybody else. I just went down to the dealership today in Fall River to drop my car off, and I went by the old Harbor Mall, right? It's the South Coast Marketplace. All these nice high-end stores right there off the exit. Why in the heck do we not have this at Kings Highway? Okay? Kings Highway should be the gem of what should be eventually like an uptown, right? The mayor likes to spend lots of money in the downtown, but uptown would be where the airport is about to be redeveloped. The commuter rail drops people off at Church Street, right? We could have a Church Street marketplace there. Why is this not happening? I have been hounding the mayor since I got elected to work on developing that area. Okay. Now,
hasn't that area been marketed for a long time in the big
yeah,
box?
so why are we, well, because now
big stores have not been interested in coming there.
Because that was before the commuter rail was there, and our business tax is through the roof, right?
You're saying commuter rail is hurting the big box stores from coming?
No. When did I say that? I said the commuter rail is now there and can be used to offset the fact that the business tax is so high, right? So we literally are dropping off potential customers right there at the foot of that Kings Highway Plaza. Okay. Currently, we have several stores that I wouldn't say are, you know, if you compare the quality of the stores at the South Coast Marketplace in Fall River to what we have in the Kings Highway Plaza, it's like night and day.
But isn't that a totally new development on vacant land, easier to realize?
To attract other businesses to go in there. I mean, you should be able to attract, again, that you're talking about business owners should be wanting to knock down the door to locate in that
I
plaza.
mean, it was a development built from the ground up. Marco, what do you think? How do we grow revenue in the city? Industrial and
Yeah,
commercial.
yeah, I'm not. So I'm talking to you right now from Church Street. I live right down the road from the commuter rail. And I definitely agree that Kings Highway in the future will probably be more developed. I think it's inevitable. There's a Chipotle going in right now that I'm very excited about. And I think it's just going to get better and better, especially with the airport's increased traffic. And I know they're running a lot of promotions right now, trying to get as many people on board with flying to Logan Airport. It's a great deal. You land in Logan Airport behind the TSA, behind the security checks, save a ton of time. So I think things like the train, things like the airport are going to help a ton in the north end. And I think we do got to double down, triple down on efforts to have folks already living in the city start businesses, incentivize them, give them guidance, give them grants, double and triple down those efforts. I think a lot of people in New Bedford have something to offer. And I would love to see some small businesses go into places like Kings Highway and in other parts of town. I think it'd be nice to have a big box store, but I think we have a lot of talented folks and entrepreneurial folks already in New Bedford that could become part of the business community, get on those tax rolls, and contribute more revenue to the city. And I'm eager to see what Kings Highway looks like in the next 5 to 7 years. I think it'll look much different.
You agree with that, Leo, that there are other alternatives besides big box
Well,
stores?
of course there are. We should have a blend. I mean, but we don't have a single big box retail store in New Bedford other than Market Basket, right? So Fall River has a Target, Fall River has a Walmart, or they did. Dartmouth has a Walmart. I mean, we need to have some of these larger stores to help anchor, smaller stores in there. You need a blend. And one thing I just wanted to quickly add, here is one way that we will absolutely not grow the commercial industrial tax base, which is by allowing a garbage company to come in and do trash sorting. So that is the most ill-conceived idea, that Parallel Products coming in there to do that. There is not a price tag, even if they were going to pay the city $100 million a year. You're not going to destroy the North End allowing that company in because we need revenue. So I would say to the mayor and to the Economic Development Committee, bring in local businesses and grow what we have here in the North End. Do not bring in industries that are going to pollute the city, cause potential health crises, not only to New Bedford, but to the watershed in the town of Dartmouth.
Maria, what do you think about growing revenue for the city? Industrial, commercial businesses pay more than residential businesses, but New Bedford had a mixed record. As I said, there's been a lot on the waterfront, although as far as I know, and I support the wind turbines, as I've said this week, I'm not sure there's a lot of revenue coming into the city from that. How do we grow revenue?
So I always wondered what we were doing wrong in the city to really bring in more businesses. Because when you look at New Bedford and where it's situated, where we are on the map, we should be able to attract a lot more businesses and industry to the city. And unfortunately, that's not happening. And, we were an industrial city. There are still some industrial parts of the city that we're trying through zoning to change, which I think is good, but also bad. The waterfront, to me, is the one place that I am adamant about not changing the zoning down there. Our fishing industry has always been the catalyst of this city, and we want to make sure that that continues. And honestly, we should be doing better in helping our fishermen and our fishing fleet to broaden their existence down in the waterfront. Wind, I agree that we need to find other sources of energy. I'm not a big fan of wind in the sense of I thought it was a mistake to put those huge turbines in an area of the ocean that's very important for our fishing industry and fleet. But that's a whole different conversation here. You know, again, downtown is very important and it's great. Every downtown of a city is very important. But I wish this mayor would also focus on the other areas of the city, like Acushnet Avenue, County Street, Rivet Street. You know, these used to be economic engines of the city, and we just don't see that anymore. It's great that we have the train. I'm a big supporter of that. It's great that it's on Church Street. And I know that there have been some glitches with the neighborhood because, again, we want to make sure that people don't lose their sense of identity who live in that area. You know, waking up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning with a train whistle going is not the greatest thing ever. But again, I support the train. I think it's great. And it's like everything else, something new, it takes a while for people to get used to. But yeah, New Bedford needs to do a better job. And I will point the finger to the mayor. He does need to do a better job in bringing industry to this city.
Okay.
You know, I don't understand why places like Microsoft and, you know, Amazon went to Fall River. You know, we need to do better. And,
Yeah.
it just doesn't, I just don't want to see small stores. You know, it's great that I just don't want to see a gym or warehouses. You know, we got to do more. We got to do better than that.
Okay. Doesn't Fall River have a lot more developable land than New Bedford? I could be wrong, but you look at the geography of it in the open land, it looks more. Scott, what are your ideas for growing revenue for the Hatfield and commercial tax base in the city?
Well, taxes, taxes, taxes. Well, you know, you think about removing barriers from housing, but we also need to do the same for the businesses. Um, you know, we need Economic Development Council here who is serious about building commercial businesses. You know, we hear from the current New Bedford businesses that Taunton is actually trying to get them to go there and move over there. You know, we just we need a more competitive economic development team, and we don't have that.
So how do we get it?
Good question. You know, just you gotta have a better team, right? You know, we got to work with the economic with the development team. Just in, you know, I just like I said, it's just they're just not working together. We just, you know, as a city council, we just need to step in and try to help that and try to get them to work together and work with us.
Okay. Renee, do you have any thoughts on how the city could better grow industrial and commercial tax base?
Yeah, very rudimentary, but so I've been here in New Bedford, Jack, now for probably almost 18 years between my time of working for the city, and my time in Middleborough. So in my time here, I've seen a lot of starts and stops in New Bedford. And, you know, we've had a lot of like great ideas and great things coming, and then it never happens. So I really think that New Bedford, the administration, the council, the taxpayers, we need to decide what New Bedford wants to be, first of all. I mean, and once we decide how we want our New Bedford to look, that's when we can go about like actually encouraging businesses to come into our city. And that's not only encouraging businesses to come into our city, it's also supporting new businesses like New Bedford R&R, the robotics company that just came in. Things like that, where they're fully using our waterfront as the basis of a business. And maybe these are the things that we need to look at. I know we're putting a lot of focus right now on our waterfronts with our harbor walk, our cove walk, and today I saw the river walk, and I think that's beautiful and I think it's wonderful. But maybe that's where our focus needs to be. I mean, we were a whaling city, we were a textile city, we were going to be the wind city. I mean, I don't know anymore, Jack. What are we trying to be? And once we decide what we want to be, we need to figure out how to be more welcoming and open our doors and let people in, and stop putting up all of the barriers that I see in terms of permitting, in terms of zoning, and we just need to do a better job all around in terms of what we want our city to be. Are we going to be the city of the light? And we had that as the lighthouse, and I thought that was a wonderful thing for a very long time. But I don't see any cohesiveness. We really just need a cohesive approach to connecting the entire city, whether it's an economic engine, looking at it that way. I mean, everything, the economic engine, the housing engine, all of it. It all needs to come together. And that's the only way we're going to survive as a city, quite frankly.
Okay, Joe Lopes, do we need a more cohesive approach, or what are your thoughts on how
So
to?
Jack, I wrote down a few things that I still think are true today. So the second business park has been something we've been discussing since 2017. We were all set to do it the first time, and then COVID happened, and we reset. Well, market corrections and then COVID. So now, if we look at that second business park, which I still support, we need to look at developing it. Then not just for the larger space, but to have the micro or the flex space for some of the smaller incubator businesses that want to grow their business and then grow into larger space. That's one. I supported the Mass CEC Center. I think if that had been built in the city, that was going to provide us a catalyst for scientific exploration for companies that are working in that space, somewhat like NOAA has done on the Cape. And then the next that go hand in hand, TIFs and express permitting. When you talk to developers, they're always looking for the tax increment financing. And then they're always looking at how do they get the project done with permitting at the fastest possible way to allow them to get the financing and move the project forward, go from shovel in the ground to feet on the street. So I think if we look at the second business park, express permitting, and how do we put that TIF together into a package and continue to work with EDC and the administration, you have the basis for economic growth commercially that, as we were talking about to the very beginning, how do you bring down rent costs? Well, if you have greater increase in commercial revenues coming in, you don't need to have the burden on the residential taxpayer, which most of the city's budget is made up of residential taxpayers. So if there's not that increase on taxes, you don't have to see the rent going up at the rate in which it's going, because that is a driving factor in what we started with, the cost for housing in the city.
All right. So before we wrap up, I would be remiss if I didn't touch on a number of character issues that have come up during the campaign. And the way I'm going to deal with this, I'm just going to, various of you have raised them or rebutted them. I'm just going to raise them and then let anyone talk who wants to talk about them. We've had issues of how the longevity pay could have gone on undiscovered in the treasurer's office so long. We've had allegations of sexual harassment. We've had allegations of a business loan from the city with ARPA money irresponsibly used. And we've had allegations of the present city council just totally not being able to work cooperatively with the mayor. Does anybody want to touch any of those issues? I'll give you a chance. I think some voters do vote on character, and that's why I've raised them. Leo.
I had a parking ticket once I didn't pay on time.
I don't think making light of these issues is the way to to do that. The issues that I've raised are serious issues.
Yeah.
But-
So, no, listen, as far as the city council goes, we do have a problem and difficult times working with the mayor. All of my colleagues here can tell you that, okay? There's a lot of personalities on an 11-person council, and they are set against one personality in the corner office. Strong mayor government, weak council. So there are a lot of personalities, and we don't always get it right. You know, like we have the incident going on right now with Chief Thody. You know, and maybe this is something that you're alluding to on character issues. This, you know, most of the council felt as though the mayor didn't do this correctly. Chief Thody didn't come before us in a manner in which the city council should have been treated. There's a lot, and again, me speaking as the rookie, right, out of all the city councilors, it took about 15 months before I had my first argument with John Mitchell, but it happens, right? I mean, obviously, I'm very upset with how he handled parallel products. So we all have our issues with the mayor, but the thing is that, you know, we try to work together and keep open channels of communication with the corner office, because look, at the end of the day, if we don't, then the residents suffer, right? Because city government grinds to a halt. So, you know, we try to do the best we can. I can't speak for everyone, but in that instance, you know, I figured I'd throw that out there. It is a personality conflict, and you know, we are here to do the best job we can for the people. If democracy was simple, right, it would be the government everywhere in the world. Not every government in the world is a democracy, because democracy is tough, and it's you know, everybody does have a say, which they should, but it takes longer to get things done, and that's just the reality of the situation. So with that, I will yield. Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Leo. Anybody else wants to raise any issues about those character issues, alleged character issues? Maria?
I will agree with my colleague that, you know, you have 11 different personalities on the city council. And, you know, we don't always get along. We don't always agree. And that's okay. That's what a democracy is all about. So I think overall we're a good group of people who have differences of opinion. We don't always agree with the mayor. I've never, you know, criticized the mayor on his personality or what I think his personality should be. But, you know, overall, I think we've got a good group of people. I'm very proud to serve on the New Bedford City Council, and I hope going forward that I'll continue to do that. But everybody has flaws, Jack. Nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes. You know, we forget things sometimes. Again, nobody is perfect. Everybody has flaws. But I think overall, you have a group of people on the New Bedford City Council that are very dedicated to their constituency and the city as a whole. And I think that's what's important.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I
Otherwise-
would just like to, yeah, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I've been having a great time talking to folks at the doors, and the majority of folks I meet door to door are hardworking and they're honest. And I think the folks I talk to deserve public officials that are also, you know, honest and held to a high degree of accountability. So I think that, you know, if anything is happening, I think, you know, hopefully those issues are figured out and come to light. And if folks did something wrong, you know, that is aired out. But I think the folks that inhabit the city deserve a hardworking and honest council.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Anybody
Okay.
else? Renee?
Yeah. So I only want to say, Jack, that when I left the city of New Bedford 3 years ago to go to work for the town of Middleborough, it was definitely because I felt like there was something missing. I can tell you that my exit interview with John Mitchell did not go well, because I really felt like as a taxpayer in the city of New Bedford that I wasn't being represented, whether it was by John Mitchell or by the city council. I just felt like their mission their missions didn't align with my missions. And one of the reasons that I went to Middleborough was because I really was yearning for a representational type of government, where there was town meeting and you had a voice, and, you could go to a select board meeting and you could stand up and you could say what you thought. And it was great because that's what I was accustomed to before I came to New Bedford. But in the last 3 years, what I realized was that I still came home to New Bedford every day, so nothing really changed for me. So that's one of the reasons that I decided to run. And what's important to me right now is that, I'm looking forward to being a member of the city council, and I'm also looking forward to working with all of the city council members, and the administration as well, to sort of work through some of the issues that are going on in New Bedford, and also to make sure that everybody has a voice, in whatever they need to, whatever they want people to hear. I want people to know that they can be heard. And the other important thing in all of that is that, I always think about, even while I haven't been in New Bedford, I think about the New Bedford way. And I think that's one of the best things that John Mitchell ever came up with, was his statement of values. I still have that in my house on the wall. And I believe that, working with integrity and professionalism and honesty are the most important things in the world, in any public service that anybody could do. So with all of that being said, I'm looking forward to working with everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Renee. Scott, Joe, anything?
Can I go? I can go. So first of all, I want to thank you, Jack, for hosting this event tonight. I thought it was really great. I want to thank Councilor Jester and all the city councilors for being here tonight as well. I just want to serve my community and make a difference for everyone. There's no doubt I want better for my community. I'm not a career politician, nor do I aspire to be. I'm just a hardworking resident who loves the city. I believe in its potentials, and I am asking the voters of Ward 2 to take a chance on me. I'm a guy who will show up and listen and work his butt off every single day to make our neighborhood stronger, safer, and more connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Jack, I'll just add, I just want to thank, you and the New Bedford Light and all of my colleagues and everyone running for office for the opportunity to come out and present where we collectively agree and where we don't always agree on issues, but we're all collectively wanting to serve the residents in the city of New Bedford.
All right. I just want to wrap up by thanking each and every one of you for taking part in this candidates forum. I think you've all done a great job. You took the questions, which not everybody who's running for office did this year. And good luck to all of you. And let's hope the voters in New Bedford come out in large numbers.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Night.